Have you tried Snapplique yet? Snapplique is a fun and easy method to take traditional quilting patterns and turn them into machine embroidery designs. In this particular series, I'm going to be doing Merry Christmas, and this is a beautiful quilt from Amy Bradley Designs, and it is a quilting applique design. We'll scan the pattern pieces into the Brother Scan and Cut and convert it into a machine embroidery design. You can even use the Scan and Cut to cut out all your pieces. If you've never done this before, I highly encourage you to give it a try. It's a lot of fun, and you will be amazed that you can make adorable blocks like this in just a matter of minutes. I hope you can join me and do Snapplique with me, where you can do applique in a snap. Okay, we are ready to get started with fabric prep for the Merry Christmas quilt from Amy Bradley Designs. This is traditionally a quilt pattern. It's not an embroidery pattern, and we're going to use my Snapplique method in order to convert it to an embroidery pattern and let the embroidery machine do all of those buttonhole stitches for us. I call it a blanket stitch. Okay, the very first one that I'm going to do is the penguin, but before we get started with that, I need to get all of the background fabrics cut. When you get the pattern, page 6, there are various different cuts that we need to make, different size cuts for the background blocks, because 4 of the blocks have the applique bleed over into the sashing. So those pieces need to be put together first, and I have created I labeled a couple of Ziploc bags. This one is for the polar bear and Santa, okay? And then this one is for the snowman, and this one is for the reindeer. Their cut backgrounds are different shapes and different sizes from the rest of the blocks in the quilt. Okay, so I'm going to set those aside, and the rest of them I'll just place all of the backgrounds and the sashing on a project board, and we'll go over to the sewing machine and get those put together. I've got my 2 pattern pieces for the penguin, and the reason I'm doing the penguin first is because if you are new to this process, this one has the least amount of pieces, and we're not getting into bleeding over into the sashing just yet, and that way this one is probably the simplest one to do. And I will be digitizing this little button up here. You don't have to do that. If you want to sew a button on in place of doing that, or make your button different than mine, you can do that too. So it's really simple to customize this and make it your own to what you are comfortable with at your own level of doing this process. But you're going to find it to be very easy. We do the same thing over and over and over, rinse and repeat for each block, and as you go on, it will get easier and easier. There is a fabric kit for this that has been created by Two Chicks Quilting, and I've got a link to it below. I have a link to the pattern, and I have a coupon code for 10% off, and you can click that and use the code, and you can use that for any Amy Bradley design pattern. And then you can go to Two Chicks Quilting. I've got a link to that below. I do get credit for that, so thank you very much for using my links. And when you get the fabric kit, this is my fabric kit, came in the mail. It's great, okay? They have gone through and as closely matched, as close as they can, to the original patterns and fabrics that were used in the original design. You are going to get a fabric key with your kit, and this key tells you that, for instance, fabric number 1 is the background, okay? Fabric number 2 is the letter banner, and then it goes through each one. Fabric 18, okay, you can look at these, like fabric 16 is going to be used for the penguin coat and the nutcracker coat. So it tells you which fabrics to use, and each fabric will come with a little sticker on it. And this tells you which, so fabric 24, if I go like this one is fabric 24, and it tells me that fabric 24 is for penguin beak, snowman, bird beak, reindeer light, angel hair, gingerbread man icing. Right, so if you go to my blog, powertoolswiththread.com, I have a blog post just for this quilt. And in that blog post, as you scroll down, there is a downloadable fabric key that I have put together. There is also a table of contents from one of my viewers, Sandra. Thank you so much for doing that for me. So if you don't want to print out all the pages of the pattern, you don't have to. You can just print out the pages that you want to use. But what I did is I created a key of, by block, which fabrics are used. So this key is which fabric by fabric is used in block, blah, 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 blah. This one is, in this block, here are the number of the fabrics that we'll use. So that makes it very, very easy to go through and look at this and say, okay, for the penguin, I need fabric 13, I need fabric 16, I need fabric 18, okay? I need fabric 20 and 24. So that makes it very easy to dig through your little box and pull out the fabrics that you need for that particular block. So that'll be a lot of fun. Just keeps it simple. All right. And for the pattern pieces, this one is pages 22 and 23 in the pattern. I have already scanned these pieces into the Brother Scan and Cut. I did that for all of the pattern pieces at one time during a live that I had done in the morning, and I'll link to that video right up here, and you can scooch ahead to where I get to doing that. It starts at about 20 minutes into the video. So go ahead and take a look at that to see how to do this. Also, if you are brand new and you've never done Snapplique before, I recommend that you take a look at the ghost video for the Happy Halloween quilt. It's right behind me here on my quilt stand. I'm working on the binding for that, and it's almost finished. So that video goes step by baby step of how to do this process. Now that video is a quilt as you go. Okay, so the batting is put in the hoop first along, and then there's background quilting and all of that. This quilt is going to be much more simple because the process that I'm doing here is just like a regular quilt. There will be no show mesh stabilizer in the hoop, and then the fabric will be floated on top of it, and we will get it all stitched out. And I'll go through to show you how to do that when the time comes to actually stitch the block. So I'm all prepped for this now, but I need to go ahead and get the backgrounds put together so they're ready to go when it is time to stitch each block. In the instructions, number 7 on page 6 is exactly where I am, and I'm going to follow these instructions exactly like the pattern says. So I need to cut 8 11.5-inch squares. I'm going to take fabric number 1, which is the backgrounds. Okay, has a little sticker on it, so I can go ahead and take that sticker off. When I cut fabric, I like to cut with the fold away from me. It really doesn't matter, but whatever you want to do is fine. And these are going to be trimmed down to size, so the edges don't have to match perfectly exactly on the first cut. So I'm not going to get all hung up on doing that because it'll be cut away anyway. I like to fold my fabric in half and let it hang. I have pressed this, and when I press my fabrics, I don't swish. I only press back and forth, up and down. That's the only way I do it. I feel like heat and moisture, I don't use steam, that's just me. I feel like heat and moisture can warp fabric. So that's my philosophy on ironing. I just don't do that. All right, let's get down here. Okay, this needs to be an 11.5-inch cut. So it says to cut 2 strips. I like to cut efficiently, so I'm going to cut 2 strips at one time. So on page 7 it says right here, backgrounds 8 11.5-inch square. If using the same fabric for all backgrounds, cut 3 11.5-inch strips and then open them up and subcut. All right, so let's do that. I'm going to go ahead and cut 3 11.5-inch strips. And I don't get all hung up on lines on the mat for this. Again, these are going to be trimmed down. So I will be cutting 2 strips at the same time. 11.5, I'm going to make it easy on myself and just line it up on the 20 right here. So I need to cut these at 31.5. If you have a ruler that has an extra 1/2 inch on one side, that makes it so much easier. This is a Quilter Select, my favorite ruler. I've used it for years. And that way I can line up this dark black line on the 31, and I know that I'm getting an extra 1/2 inch on that. It just makes life so much easier. So starting on the 20 and going to 31.5, I'm going to cut. And when you cut, I open up my rotary cutter. I have a brand new blade in here, and I'm going to pop that open so it stays. Start behind the fabric closest to you, and you're going to walk your hand. Keep your hand away from the edge over here. Hand will go here, hand will go here. The Quilter Select has a rubberized backing on it. I just love it. If you don't have one, there are other rubber grippy things that you can get to put on the back of your rulers. Very handy. There are all kinds of handles that you can attach. There's all different things. So I'm going to start back here. I'm not holding it like this, and I'm not at an angle. I'm just going to go straight, halfway, hold it, and push. Okay, so there are 2 of the 3 strips we need to cut. Open that up. All right. So there's 2 of them. And I'm going to move this other one to a line. All right, we'll do it on the 27. And I need 11.5, so I need to get it out to 38.5. That's 11.5 inches. 27 and 11 is 38.5. Okay, start in the back, right? I like my hand here, and I like to spread my hand apart. It gives me a lot of grip all over this large ruler. Okay, there's my extra. Okay, measure twice, cut once. All right, so I need, according to the pattern, I need 8 11.5 inch blocks. Let's see. Okay, I'll get them out of this. Let me take this one and put it to the side, that third one. Now, we are going to trim these down. I've got selvage here. Do I need to cut it off? You can if you want, but you're going to cut it off anyway. So in my mind, you might as well leave it. So I'm going to use that because it's going to be just fine in the embroidery machine after we get through. So I'm going to even up all the selvages and shake them so they're the same. Embroidery is very different from quilting, and it's much more forgiving. So you've got to keep in mind we're going to be doing embroidery. All right. So I'm going to put the edge of the selvage just over that 20 mark right here. And I need 11.5, so I'm going to go back to 31.5. 31.5. Okay. There's 4. The right amount out of that. I need 4 more. So I'm going to put this at 20. We'll go to 31.5. All right, there's 6. Okay, so I've got my 8 11.5 inch square backgrounds, and then I need 1 10.5 by 11.5. All right, so we've got a little bit extra for scrap. You can use those. All right, so this is the shorter one. So this one is for the reindeer. This is the one that's 10.5 by 11.5. I'm gonna just fold it up right now and put it into my reindeer bag. And now I need to cut my sashing. And my sashing, if you got the kit, is fabric 6. I will cut the letter banner later. Now on my sashing, I need 5 2.5 by 11.5 inch strips. Okay, so I'm going to trim off my selvage. Okay, and I need 11.5. There's 4. I measure here and across here on the lines to make sure I'm getting a 90-degree cut. So now I'm going to turn my ruler around to the whole inch increments and cut a single 2-inch strip. You can put little labels on these if you want. Pull this away to make sure I had a clean cut. As you are cutting your 22 10.5-inch strips, you might want to open up the fabric before you make your multiple cuts. Be very careful and make sure that you can get a full 4 cuts out of one 2-inch strip. And if you make a boo-boo, this is a Moda Bella White from the fabric kit. And you can get this easily at any quilt shop. Okay, I've got all my pieces cut. I'm gonna go sew my backgrounds together with the sashing pieces so I can get them into their bags for the little odd blocks, and then everything else will be ready to put into a hoop for embroidery. All right, so here at the bottom of page 6, I'm getting ready to sew sashing onto the main background blocks. So for the polar bear and Santa Claus, I'm going to take I got to see it. I got to take a 2.5-inch strip and sew it to one side of an 11.5-inch square. All right, so I'm going to get one of the 11.5-inch squares. Remember, one of them for the reindeer is 11.5 by 10.5, and I have put that one aside in the baggie. I'll get to that in a minute. So I'm going to take a 2.5-inch strip and sew it to one side. It doesn't matter which side, this is a solid. We're going to do a total of 3 of these. Now I'm going to go press my seams. I'm going to press them to one side to the dark. I won't press them open. So I'm going to take one piece and put it into my snowman baggie. That way I know I'm not going to get mixed up with these. And then I'm going to take 2 more these last 2, and I'm going to put them in for the polar bear and Santa. You don't want to sew on the side with the selvage. So these are ready to go. Now the reindeer, that's going to be on the top of page 7. The height of the block is 10.5. So I need a 2.5-inch strip along the long top edge. So this needs to be pressed with, I'm going to put the seam allowance to the dark. For the reindeer, once you get this top piece on, what the pattern wants you to do is to go ahead and applique on the piece of the cord, and it has the bottom edge of that cord being caught into the seam allowance. So there's 2 ways you can do this. You can stitch this top part on, and then you can snapplique down the edge of that cord and then stitch on the last 2.5-inch strip, and that will have that piece of cord in the seam allowance. Or you can place your design completed exactly as you want and just place the bottom edge of that cord right on the seam. If you have an embroidery machine with the ability to project the design down, like in the Luminaire or the Stellaire, the Luminaire or the Babylock Solaris, that can be very helpful. You can print the design out and place it exactly where you want and hope your design hits that, okay? So there's a couple different ways you can do it. I'm going to go ahead and place the Snapplique piece down, and if I don't sew it in, I may just scratch up that little edge just a little bit and just barely make sure that that piece of applique is caught in the seam. But I'm going to wait to do that until I get to the reindeer block, and that will be much later on in the quilt after we're much more comfortable with putting all of these blocks together. So for now, I'm going to take this block with the 2.5 inch piece on top, the extra 2.5 inch piece that goes on the bottom, and I'm just going to put them together into the reindeer baggie. Anybody need a beer? And I'll cross that bridge when I get to it. Okay. So this is good. Now all the rest of the blocks that we have are for all of the remaining backgrounds that are going to go into the quilt. So let's prep the fabric for applique for the penguin. Okay, I am here at canvasworkspace.brother.com. There are 2 different versions of Brother Canvas, and you don't have to have a Brother embroidery machine in order to be able to use this platform. So I am using the online version. I had to open up my Edge browser, or you can use Chrome or Safari or anything like that. Across the top we have several tabs, and I'm going to go to My Projects. This is where I scanned in all of the pattern pieces, and I'm going to look for my little penguin. He's right here, and I've got 2 icons for edit this project or download. So I'm going to edit, and what I want to do right now is I want to figure out how large to make the fabric for each piece. If you're not sure how I got right here, there is a video that I did during a live, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, to explain how all of these pieces were put into Brother Canvas by scanning them in the Brother Scan and Cut, and then those mats were cleaned up to get rid of all the extra stuff that we don't need. You can take a look at that and it'll explain how. So these pieces right here are the same fabric. So both of those are. I'm going to just rotate them, and I'm going to put them in such an orientation that I can conserve the amount of fabric that I need in order to cut them. And the easiest way to do that looks like it's going to be this right here. Okay, and I can highlight both of these pieces, right click and group. And when I right click and group them, if you look down here at the bottom of the screen, we've got 6.79 by 5.12. I like to add an inch, 3/4 to an inch of each one of those numbers, and that way I can make sure I have enough fabric all the way around the outside of the pieces, so we have the grippiness that we need for the fabric to stay stuck to the mat as the blade or the rotary blade goes around it. So this is the collar. I'm making myself a little note on a little sticky pad for my collar. I'm going to cut 7.75 by 6.5. And that will be enough, an extra inch-ish, to cut that, and we'll have plenty of fabric and we're not going to run short. Okay, here's the little nose. I'm going to place these on the mat where I need them so that I've got room to place that square. This is 1.63 by 2.13, so let's do a 2.75 by 2.5. This is all ready to be downloaded to the Scan and Cut now, so I can cut out the pieces. Well, first what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit this inbox right here with an arrow, and I'm just going to click it, and it's going to overwrite the project. So if I need to come back to it, everything's already moved around on the mat where I want it. Okay, and now I'm going to download this, and I need to select the file transfer method. So I'm going to download to PC, and there is my penguin.fcm. That is my file that will be imported into the embroidery software, into Embrilliance. And Scan and Cut Transfer, I'm going to click this, and it says Scan and Cut Transfer is ready, and close. Okay, so I just went ahead and did that step while I was here at Brother Canvas and showing you how to determine what the size is. If you don't do that right now and you want to make the block later, you can do that as well. So let's prep our fabric and put the heat and bond light on it and get it ready to be cut. I've got two different products here on my ironing board. So the first one is by Pellon, and it's called SF101 or Shape Flex 101. The only reason I'm using this product is to provide more opaqueness to the white fabric. It's pretty opaque right now, but it is going to sit on top of the black, and I don't want that black line to show through for the hair. So I'm just very simply, I'm not going to pre-shrink it or anything because it's not going to be that big of a piece. And after this gets done, it will also go on to Heat and Bond Light. So I'm only putting SF101 on the white fabric just to make it a little more opaque. And what I do, this is the sticky side, this is a single-sided fusible. So I feel little glue bumps right here. I just put the back of the fabric on it, made sure I had a little bit of fabric over the edge of the SF101 and ironed it to it. And then what I do is I take a cutting surface, and this is a June Taylor cut and press. I love these. I'm going to put it under here, and I have a rotary cutter handy. I have a little, this is a hemness dresser, my ironing surface. And in the dresser I've got a little cup, and I've got lots of goodies in there. So I'm just going to cut this like right a thread or two into the fabric so I don't have any adhesive sticking out along the outside. This is a little unconventional, but it's the easiest and quickest way to get fabrics onto substrates. A substrate is something you put onto the back of the fabric to change it. All right, so now we have that more opaque, and now I am using Heat and Bond Light. This is a Heat and Bond product, okay? They make all kinds of stuff too. Brand new bolt, yay! Okay, this is a double-sided fusible, so it will fuse to the back of the fabric, and then when we peel the paper off, it will fuse background fabric. So one side goes on applique, and the other side goes on the background fabric. All right, what I'm gonna do is just give myself a little working room here, and I'm just gonna put these right on top, just barely covering the edge of the Heat and Bond Light so that I don't get any adhesive on my iron. I'm just gonna lightly press these and get the wrinkles out. Doesn't have to be anything fancy. Okay, I can take this. I'm just gonna overlap it a couple of threads and make sure I've got fabric on the outside. I can't see any Heat and Bond Light. This is the way I do this. It's really quick and easy. I've had people laugh out loud when they see me doing this. It just works really good though. So I'm just covering the outside edges. Okay. I'm trying to figure out how I can be most efficient with this stuff. We'll put this right here. And again, I'm not just, so I can't see any Heat and Bond, okay, at all underneath my fabrics. Now I'm just going to lightly tack them with my iron. This is just to get them to be tacked to the fabric so that I can cut them off of the bolt. You don't have to get all wound up about stuff being exact size or anything like that. Just make sure you don't have any Heat and Bond showing behind your fabrics. Okay, so now I'm going to take my rotary cutter, and again, I'm just going to trim a thread or two on these, on my cutting surface, because I'm going to iron them again, and I don't want any goopy or sticky glue on my ironing surface. I treat it bad enough already. It doesn't need any help. You can use scissors if you want. I just find this to be really easy. Okay. Awesome. Great. This gets rolled back up for another use and goes in the drawers. And I'm all finished with this. See how easy that was? Quick and easy. Now, I want to hold my iron for 5 to 8 seconds. in every spot on this and make sure I have a really, really good adhesion. Okay, now that they are all adhered really well, you can tell if you have a good adhesion when, first of all, it should peel very easily off of the paper backing, and then the back of the fabric should look like glass. It should be very glassy looking. See how shiny and glassy that is? If it's dull, your iron is not hot enough, and you risk this stuff getting stuck to the scan and cut mat when you cut your pieces out. So that's it. I can just leave all of these in one place, and now this is all ready to go over to the scan and cut and be cut out when it's time to put the penguin together. So that's it. That's what you need to do to all of your fabrics. So now you know how to prep your background fabrics and how to prep your applique fabrics, and we're ready to get started making these blocks. If you like the content, please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe. We will talk to you soon. You guys go sew something. Bye.